Hey guys, welcome to the WalterFootball.com After Dark Show for November 8, 2024. We're going to be doing our Week 10 NFL picks, Thursday thoughts for the 2024 NFL season. Before we intro our co-host for tonight, please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video, visit the link in the description for the merch store. As you can see, we have a ton of t-shirts here. Looks like 20% off sale, so you can get most of these shirts between $17 and $19. So I think it's a good deal. You know, these are high quality shirts. They've lasted forever. I am, of course, wearing one of them. It is the hashtag Ken Griffin lied. That was part of the AMC GameStop stuff that happened a few years ago. So one of these, it is available here somewhere. I don't know exactly where, but it is here, I promise. Unless they took it down. No, here it is. Ken Griffin lied. So $17.36. Yeah, 20% off. So any of this would help out a lot. Please consider super chats, super stickers as well. John Sanders helped us out yesterday, and we had another one from Andrew, I believe. So it really helps out a lot. Like, I can't stress that enough. I joke all the time, like, you can go outside and pick up change, and I'll make more money than I do with the YouTube ads. But you know, this is a lot of fun, but it still keeps the show going. So it really, these contributions really help. So any further help would be great. Also consider buying my books. You can go on Amazon for them. The most recent one is Jerks of the College Years. We have an AI question. Does it contain any offensive content? Depends on what you classify as offensive. But yeah, you can buy that. Also, my other book, how the 2020 MVP was stolen. That is the story about how Brett Favre tried to sabotage Aaron Rodgers 4 years ago. So you can read about that there. Also, Safety and a Field Goal is my other book. So we are joined tonight by Andy Iskoe of the logicalapproach.com. Andy, how are you, and how was your week 9?
Week 9 was very good. I had a couple of nice plays that I had really liked most of the week. Of course, the one that upset me the most was the Giants against the Commanders, because Brian Daboll says, well, let's see, it's 24-16, fourth quarter. Oh, let's go for 2, okay? And, of course, they missed it, so it's 24-16. And Washington does add a field goal, so now, okay, now we have to go for 2 to try and make it 27-24, and they miss it again. So 27-22 is the final, getting 4.5. Well, that's it. But the thing to me that is annoying, and you know the answers, but play along with this. Remember week 2 when the Giants didn't have the field goal, didn't have a kicker, and they had to go. They had no choice but to go for 2, and they did it 3 times after they scored a touchdown, and they were 0 for 3. Remember that?
I remember that very, very well, because I had the Giants for a big play.
I was just going to say, who did the Giants play that day?
Washington.
And who did they play last Sunday?
Washington.
And they were, not only were they 0 for 3 in that game, they were 0 and 3 against the team they just played last week, and they didn't learn anything from that first experience. Now, we'll talk about it a little bit more, but you know, the thing is that well, I'll save it for if we talk tonight's game or the Kansas City game, but going for 2 at the very end.
Well, I mean, we can touch on it. I didn't have a play on the game. Cassandra says, so glad I was on that game tonight. It would have been livid. I would have as well. You know, that sort of backdoor cover. It wasn't really a backdoor cover because they're trying to get the win. But yeah,
even if they had gone for the tie at well, yeah, you still might not have covered it because if they scored a touchdown, you don't kick the extra point. So if you're getting 6.5 with Cincinnati, you would have had it anyway. No, but they had to score. But they had to score that last touchdown to do so in the final 2 minutes.
Right.
To get the opportunity to make the decision.
Around 7:30, I found a -5.5. So I kind of recommended that.
In game, yeah.
Yeah, no, not in game. Actually, it was about an hour before.
7. Okay, about 45 minutes. Yeah, 45.
Yeah, my time. About 7:30 my time. I found Baltimore -5.5. So I recommended that. I'm like, because these 6s you had to pay -115 on, and the -5.5 was -120. So I'm like, you're only really paying 5 cents on the dollar
for a critical half point.
Exactly.
Well, it could be a critical, as it turned out, almost was.
Right. So I thought the Baltimore -5.5 was the right move there. And it looked like that was going to be the case, but then they throw the touchdown. And of course, they didn't go for 2, but they miss a couple of penalties. They saw roughing the passer and also holding in the end zone, which both announcers were pretty upset about. So you mentioned the going for two at the end, which the Patriots last week and also the Buccaneers were criticized for not doing so. And then I was texting with Evan during the game, and it was like before the
You're
touchdown.
talking about tonight's game. You're texting with him.
Yeah, I was talking. Yeah, I was texting with him during tonight's game, and so we were both rooting for overtime because we needed Zay Flowers to go over the receiving yards for our singing parlays. And I texted him. I'm like, I don't think they're going to go for overtime because so many teams have been criticized for not going for two. So if they score a touchdown, I think they're going to go for two, and that's what they did. But yeah, you said you wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you something. What's the success rate of 2-point conversions, roughly?
I mean, I think it depends on how good the offense is.
No, I'm just trying. That's why I'm asking. What do they say the overall success rate is? Because that's what they say. Well, the success rate is X, and that's basically what they base analytics on. A lot of these coaches. But because you were delving into exactly where I was headed. Let's say it's 50%. Okay. Is it 50% all the time? Well, yeah. You have to take into account the offense, and you have to take into account the defense. Okay, how good they are in short yardage situations, offense and defense, etc. But you also have to take into account the time of the game. Going for two with a success rate earlier in the game may be a lot more successful than it is in the final 2 minutes of a game. So what's the statistical breakdown on 2-point conversion rates? And I'll tell you why that's important. Okay, we can use the San Francisco Tampa Bay game. We can use tonight's game. Okay, if you go for you've got a choice. Do we go for overtime, or do we take a chance to win the game now? Okay, and we can use the Tampa Bay example because it worked out that way, where Tampa Bay decided to go not to go for two, and they end up losing the game because they lost the coin toss. Yes, it was against Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City, but hey, look, it was scary enough to think that he had 21 seconds something left after they went for could have gotten the tie. He still might have gone down the field, but. Who's to say if Tampa Bay doesn't win the coin toss that they don't go down and get a touchdown and end the game that way, which is another subject that we can touch upon briefly as well. The point is, though, if you go for two and you miss in the second quarter, the first quarter, early third quarter, you still got plenty of time to recover. If you go for two in the situation that Tampa Bay had to, or that Cincinnati had to tonight, and you lose and you don't make it, that's a fatal flaw. There is no recovery from that failure. There are possibilities for earlier failures. Now, when you get to tonight's game specifically, a tie is generally better than a loss. Okay, now obviously Cincinnati needed the win because they already lost to Baltimore, and they're probably not going to be able to win the division because you still got Pittsburgh hanging above them anyway, although they've got some games there as well. But tiebreakers for the wild card, a tie is better than a loss. Suppose you go down and at the end of the season, Cincinnati, let's say there are two teams at 8-9, and Cincinnati's 8-1. Who wins the tiebreaker? 8-1 does. Okay, or 9-7-1 versus 9-8. Okay, now take a big effort for Cincinnati to get to 9 wins, but the point is a tie is better than a loss. But people don't think about it when it comes down to tiebreakers, not within your division, but within the conference as well. In fact, coming into tonight's game, I think Cincinnati, I think they were 4-5, and they were tied. Maybe it was with the one other team for the first teams out of the playoffs. Okay, so if, in other words, I forget who was listed 8, and Cincinnati I think was listed 9. Okay, whoever was listed 8 is 4-5, could be 4-6. Cincinnati could have been 4-5-1 with the tie. That's just an example. So I didn't have a criticism about that. The biggest criticism is the fact that if you go for two in that situation and you miss, it's a fatal flaw. You cannot recover from that. Okay. If you go for it with 3 minutes to go, it's probably fatal, but if you got timeouts, you might still get another possession. But when you're talking about, the last 30 seconds of a game, if you miss it, that's it. Even if you happen to recover an onside kick, which is almost impossible, you still have to have other things go your way. And, the chances are, it may be 50% for a 2-point conversion. It's about 3% for recovering an onside kick if you fail on the 2-point conversion and you need to try the onside kick. But what I was going to get to before as well, I hate that rule. We talked about it before, that if a team scores a touchdown on the first possession of overtime, the other team should be allowed an opportunity to have a full possession until whatever that ensuing drive ends, whether it ends in another touchdown and you kick the extra point and the game ends in a tie, or you go for it on fourth down and you don't make it, or you miss the extra point, whatever. And even if it takes beyond the 10-minute deadline, they should have that opportunity, because the reason the team scored a touchdown and had an opportunity first, because they won the coin toss. It had nothing to do with a football play. Now, if you want to have a rule in there that maybe says, I'll tell you what, if the game is tied at the end of regulation, at whatever point it's tied, you continue the game from that point. So let's say Cincinnati scores and they kick the extra point, it's tied, and they have to kick off to Baltimore, and Baltimore, with 30 seconds to go, has two plays, and it's 3rd and 7 or 3rd and 3. The overtime picks up from that point. I'd not have a problem with that, because again, that's decided without the benefit of a coin toss. And when you think about it, the team that loses the coin toss has two types of pressure. Number one, they have the pressure of making a stop or having the team settle for a field goal. Okay. Then they have the pressure of either matching or exceeding what the first team did, because after that, the next score wins. And I have no problem with let's say Baltimore touchdown, Cincinnati touchdown, Baltimore field goal, game over, because both teams at least had an opportunity at that point. That's the one rule. That's the one rule I would like to see changed.
My solution for fixing overtime is you play the full 10 minutes unless there are two consecutive scores by the same team. So they could be field goal, safety, touchdown, whatever.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Or okay, so you play the full 10 minutes until that happens. Or if that does not happen, by the time the 10 minutes is over, the team that is ahead wins. If it's still tied, then you play sudden death. The next score wins.
Well, we used to have that before we had the overtime rules and the changes and all that. But they say they do that for player safety. Come on, Goodell. If you're concerned about player, talks about being concerned about the player safety starts and ends with the elimination of Thursday night games after Sunday games for whatever teams are involved. Then I'll start listening to your concerns about player safety, but don't give me that garbage about player safety for onside kick rules, the kickoff rules that we have now for failure to have both teams get a possession in overtime. That's just that's being intellectually fraudulent.
I completely agree.
Until they do something about the Thursday night games, and they can, by the way, because you can have a Thursday night game. Well, it's difficult because you still unless they go to 18 games, which again you're talking about player safety. Mm-hmm. But at least at that point, you could then have two buys per team, like they did briefly. I want to say like 1991 or something like that. They had two buys in the 16-game schedule, and that way you can stagger a team can have a bye before a game and then a bye after the second bye or something like that. Another game after a Thursday night game. Okay, you can do it that way. But until they address that issue of player safety, it's just. Like I say, it's being intellectually dishonest, let's say.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's Roger Goodell's MO. They could absolutely have Thursday games as long as they take the teams off the buys. I think it's absurd to cite player safety if they do that. And extending the season to 18 games, I think, is also a mistake.
They're doing it for the money, for the TV revenues, etc. Hey, I understand that that's business. Don't lie about it. Say, yeah, we're doing it for money opportunities for the benefit of the league. Roger Goodell is always talking about doing it for the fans, and they're talking about having a Super Bowl in Europe. You're doing that too, Roger, for the fans. Yeah, the European fans.
Yeah, exactly. It feels like he's doing whatever it takes to screw over not just the fans but also the players, just to make a quick buck. I don't like the guy at all. I don't. Again, if they say we're doing it because there's added revenue in it and all that, then don't talk about player safety. And I'll say, okay, fine, you're doing it, but keep the player safety out of it if you're going to take significant measures that are totally contradictory. Yeah, like I said, my criticism of Goodell has nothing to do with the fact that he's banned me and Charlie Kimball from the combine. I
Oh,
always thought that he's always done a poor job overall. He's done some good things, but for
if
the
you're
most
an owner, if you are an owner, he's done a very good job.
and that's why they've kept him on. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mike asking who first said a tie is like kissing your sister. I believe that was Jamie Lannister. No, that was actually Tom Hamilton, the old coach of Navy back in the
Oh, I think that saying goes back probably to the Newt Rockney days or something like that, the early 20th century.
Yeah. I googled it. It says Tom Hamilton of Navy in 1946 that he said it.
I think it was before that, but I figured it was probably someone who doesn't have a sister.
Yeah, exactly. We had a question here from Marlon. Should I trade Mixon, Neighbors, DK Metcalf, and Jackson Smith-Njigba for Kyron, Tyreek, and Debo? What I find fascinating about this is that the players you're trying to trade for all had buys.
Injured, and they all had injury issues this year, or most of them did.
Yeah, not Kyron yet, but he's always he's the ticking time bomb. But they've all had their buys, and the players you're trading, none of them had buys. So if you need some wins in the regular season, then I think you should do this trade. And I talked about last night on the Fantasy Rundown show that I would be looking to trade out of Mixon because his playoff schedule is brutal. I mean, Kyron, Tyreek, and Debo. And if this is a 10-man league, then you're looking to get the best players possible.
And Montgomery is interesting because he shares duty with the Gibbs. It's part of why Detroit's been so successful this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
And by splitting the duties with those two stud running backs, come December, come playoff time, they'll be fresh because effectively they will have played about half the season that the teams with guys who are getting it 25 times a game were playing.
Yeah. By the way, I looked up the success rate of 2-point conversions this year. Do you want to take a guess on what it is this year? This year alone.
This year alone.
Yeah.
I'm going to say somewhere between 47 and 53.
31%.
That little.
That low. Yeah.
You have to take a look at the Giants. They're 5 failures just in those 2 games.
Yeah, the Giants are weighing that down considerably.
What's the number? Well, 31% is nice. What's the database? Is how many data points are there?
I don't know.
Over 100?
I just Googled it. I don't know. The AI on Google had it, so I don't know.
Yeah, because there's been coming into tonight, there've been 138 games, so I would think it's not unreasonable when you balance things out to say there's been at least 1 attempt per game. Sometimes there may have been 3, and sometimes some games there may have been none. But 138 games probably sounds like, I would say between 125 and 150. That'd be a reasonable guess.
In 2023, the success rate was 55%, so it's radically different.
And I wonder what the reason is for that. The
New York Giants, probably.
They're a contributor to that, but I mean overall that 31% now. Again, and I'm always looking at these questions to try and understand the underlying, assumptions that go into it, and that is what was the rate this year, last year at this time, which is a little bit just under. Well, basically, what do they play? They play 272 games. Over the course of a season, so we're basically at the halfway point. Was the success rate low early in the year and then rose up to that what we say 40? It was 31% this year, and what was it last year? Did you say
55?
55, yeah. So I don't, that would be it. But even regardless of how it got there, that's a huge difference.
Yeah, it really is. I think
if it's 31% now, I would think by the end of the year. Mm-hmm. You're probably looking at the 43 to 47% rate overall, and which means, by the way, you'd still have to have it probably about 60% the rest of the year to get it up there.
Yeah, I would think that there's going to be a correction to the mean, especially if the Giants stop trying to go for 2 and stop trying to do these weird swinging gate plays that never work. I don't know why teams try them; they never work.
They must have been watching old black and white films of the 1950s.
Yeah, I don't understand. There was that Colts play about 10 years ago or so that they tried. It failed miserably. I mean,
the 2 best trick plays I remember are the Peyton's onside kick in the Super Bowl when trailing, with New Orleans trailing the Colts, and the fumble Ruski that Nebraska used back to win one of those bowl games like 50 years ago or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you guys think?
I guess you'd have to say the push tush is also a clever play. Because why is it that Philadelphia is the team that's been most successful with it, and the other teams just what, 50-50, if that.
Right. You'd think they would be able to do it, but they can't. They just can't mimic it. Yeah, it's bizarre. Marlon's asking, do you think Tyreek Hill will come back to his former self? I do. I
If
don't
he
think
stays healthy, yes. I think
yeah,
we've seen how much the Dolphins missed Tua.
yeah. Tua's been out for a while, and Tua in his first game he was coming off a concussion, so I didn't think he'd play that well. And then last week they played the Bills. The Bills always do a good job on Tyreek Hill, so I think this is a
Yeah.
good time to buy low. All right, let's get to the games. So we have the Giants versus the Panthers in Germany. So the good news is that this is our final 9:30 a.m. game slash.
I was just going to say, the good thing is it starts 6:30 Pacific time. I can stay out late Saturday night.
There you go. There you go. You can party hard and then watch the game. Yeah, it's our final one. The bad news is that this is another one of these games. I hate these games so much, and it's Giants Panthers. So it's not like we get to even watch a good team play. Although it is two bad teams, so maybe we'll get some competition here. Although this line has kind of ballooned to 6.5, just based on the news that Bryce Young is going to start. So a couple injuries here. Darius Slayton is not making the trip to Germany. Ike Ekwonu was DNP twice in practice, so nothing crazy here. I'm not going to play this game because on one hand you have a bad team favored by 6.5, which I just want to stay away from. So do you take the Panthers? No, because you can't bet Bryce Young without getting more than a touchdown, unless you think so. I just can't do it. I'm going to be playing Malik Neighbors over receiving yards. Outside of that, I'm not going to be betting this game. What are any thoughts here? Do you like this game?
No, I really don't. And you mentioned most of the reasons. My numbers actually do support the Giants slightly. I've got 3 sets that I use. One has the Giants by 9. The other 2 have them by 7. But it's the Giants that I'm concerned about. Although I do think the Giants have played better over the last 3-4 weeks. Daniel Jones has been, not as mistake prone as has shown throughout his career. But I can't trust the Giants. They struggle enough to win games that they're in position to win, much less now cover a number like a touchdown. If this was, I think it opened at like 4.5. It may have, I think, a week ago. That's borderline consideration, but realistically, I don't know that I would feel comfortable at any number, but certainly I would not feel comfortable laying more than 3 with the Giants.
Yeah,
but but I'm not sure. It's a moot point because it's not going to go down that way.
Yeah, I can't get there. Do you think Dable is fired if he loses this game?
Possibly, but I don't think so.
Okay.
I thought you were going to ask at the end of the season. I would say that's a good possibility. I mean, he hasn't had a heck of a lot to, how involved was he with personnel decisions? Although, certainly Neighbors was a really good pick for them. They couldn't get the quarterback they wanted, and but the defense has played well. I think last week was maybe the first week this season that they didn't record a sack. So, there are some positives that may show themselves against the Panthers, but I'm not willing to take that risk. At 3, if I wanted to just have like a pizza bet or something, that I might do, but. Not at anything, certainly nothing above 4, and again, nothing above 3. If I were going to consider anything, I could make a case for this being an under.
Okay. Usually, I believe the international games tend to go under, so that would play into what you were saying.
Well, it's the time adjustment, the total unfamiliarity with the field, and. Just the nature of these teams. Neither of them is especially strong on offense. The Giants at least have some semblance of a defense, but they've got some turnover issues as well. Not as much as they've had in the past. But Bryce Young could put him in field position for a touchdown and a field goal. You say your book is a field goal and a safety. He could put in position for a field goal and a touchdown.
There you go. Captain Joking, huge fan of the show. Already subbed. Thank you so much. He's asking McLaurin or DeAndre Hopkins. Because he's afraid of the Steelers defense, or Surtain. I would go with McLaurin. The Steelers have actually given up decent yardage to outside receivers. So,
not only that, they also have a good running game that has to be respected. The Washingtons.
Yes.
Which could create more opportunities for the passing game.
Exactly. Yeah. I would go McLaurin. Surtain will be on Hopkins. So. I don't think Hopkins will have a good game, although he could always catch a touchdown. But I would go with McLaurin. So hope good luck in your fantasy game this week. All right, let's get to the real games here. Bills at the Colts. So with this game, the only injury news I saw of note that was Michael Pittman Jr. was DNP in practice twice, which normally would be somewhat significant, because he's such a good player, but he hasn't been good this year. He has a back injury he's dealing with. Like he probably should be an IR. He's just so ineffective, and I feel like Josh Downs has passed him as the number one receiver anyway. So with this game, the Bills have an obvious look-ahead situation, actually sandwich game, because they just are coming off a win against the Dolphins, last-second field goal. Next week they have the Chiefs. So I wonder if they're going to be focused here against the Colts, and I think the Colts match up well against Buffalo's defense, because Buffalo's defense is really good, but they are weak in two areas. They're weak to running backs, they're weak to slot receivers. The Colts to Jonathan Taylor and Josh Downs at those positions. So I think the Colts should be able to score on them. If the Bills are a little bit flat here or just unfocused, then I think the Colts could sneak within the number, which they've done a lot this year. They've kept most of the games close. So I'm on Indianapolis for just a medium play. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I'm pretty much along the same lines there. When you take a look at Buffalo, they are in a, there are two ways of looking at it. Okay, number one, they're in a sandwich situation because they've got Kansas City up next, which now they do host Kansas City. Okay, yeah. But it's still a game that they could conceivably lose. They may not want to go in. Well, I'm sure they don't want to go into that game with a potential losing streak that has a possibility, and not just a remote one, of ending up being a 2-game losing streak after facing Kansas City. On the other hand, Buffalo knows pretty much they've got the AFC East won. What are they right now? They are 7-2. The Jets are 3-6. I don't think they can make a run. Miami's the one. I think there are 9 2-win teams. And Miami is a 2-win team, but they're 2-6. Okay, so that means they've got 11 games left. If you figure it's going to take 10 wins to make a wild card, you're looking at Miami going 8-1. They got 8-1, which is a stretch to go 8-1 for almost any team. So Buffalo pretty much has the AFC East wrapped up. That doesn't mean they're not going to be capable, or certainly not want to beat Indianapolis. But the more important game in the overall scheme of things is the game against Kansas City, because that could be determinative of the number 1 seed. Okay. So if Miami makes it, I just saw the comment about Buffalo does have the tiebreaker over Miami, but that's not really the important thing. It's looking for that number 1 seed. So I think that whereas they might be able to, now of course Kansas City hasn't lost yet, but Buffalo with a win over Kansas City holds a tiebreaker edge over Kansas City, and there's nothing to say Kansas City won't lose another game or two. So I certainly agree with the situational spot not being favorable in the normal context of things. What I like about Indianapolis, they finally had one streak broken last week, but one streak continuing, and that is their first 8 games were all decided by 6 points or less. Well, they lost by 8 that Sunday night game at Minnesota, but the streak continues of now having played their first 9 games as 1-score games, 8 points or less. So they are always competitive. Now that is a little bit different with this line being 4 for Buffalo. However, again, and we saw that Miami made a pretty good effort last week up in Buffalo. We saw Arizona up in Buffalo, the opening game of the week, put 28 points on them in the 34-28 loss. So there is some hope for an Indianapolis team. I love their coach. He's very creative. And I think that there's a good opportunity. Indianapolis, they could win this game. I certainly think that they have the opportunity coming back home and keeping this game on, a 3 or 4 point game. It's always difficult to, the lower the line, the more unlikely it is for the game winner not to cover the point spread. Either Indianapolis wins outright, or they lose by 4 or less, 3 or less, depending upon where the line is, as opposed to if the line is like tonight's game, where the line came into play. Remember, in the NFL, unlike college football, the historical rate is about 85% of the games, 82 to 85% of the games, the line doesn't matter. The favorite wins or cover, or the underdog pulls the upset. Now that's decreased a little bit as far as how often the line moves, because we've seen lower lines over the past several years. Part of it is the home field advantage we talked about before. Part of it is just the overall competitive nature of the game. So it's where the average line, I forget, might have been like 6 or 7 points a year ago. It might be like 4 or 5 points today. That may be a little bit of an extreme there. But the point is that teams don't win and fail to cover as much as they did, and that's a function of the fact that the lines are lower. Having said that, the Colts are 4-5. They were 9-8 last year. I can certainly understand that the Colts have a chance to win this game. So even though I normally I apply this when the line is about 3, where I'll play about 50% on the money line and 50% on the points. I might make it. I might increase it to 55, 60% plus the 4, and maybe 40 to 45% on the money line.
Rather than the money line, would you ever consider betting the -2.5 with the underdog just to get more better payout?
Money line on.
So for example, in this case,
you mean the alternate line?
Yeah, the alt line. So for example, in this case, instead of betting Colts money line, you bet Colts -2.5 on the alt line. Do you like the better, or do you like the money line?
What's the vig on that?
I mean, I don't know offhand.
Yeah.
I could probably find an example here, but in a second. But I can let me actually look up this game. So the Colts money line is +172, and the alt line is Colts -2.5 +210.
That seems like too small of a spread. You know, if it was what'd you say, +172 straight money line?
Yeah, and -2.5 is +210.
Yeah, I'd probably want about 240 on that.
Okay.
Because you're now if the money line were a little bit higher on the game line, or if the line were 3 instead of 4, that almost sounds like going for it's almost like a 6.5 point teaser, one half of it.
Mm-hmm.
At a plus price, but then you got to put the other team in. But I don't like teasing across 0 also. So,
right.
Yeah. No, I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but I would certainly consider the money line before I would lay the 2.5.
Okay. Mike bringing up Buffalo should play all their second stringers in this meaningless game and rest up. I wonder if that's ever been done mid-season. I don't know. I don't think so. But if they continue to add games to the schedule, I think you'll see that eventually.
Yeah, I don't. I don't know that I would do it this early because, and part of the reason is Kansas City hasn't lost. So if Indianapolis, if Indianapolis plays their second stringers, they're almost conceding a loss in that game. Okay, not necessarily. Doesn't mean they can't win with their second stringers, but was it still Mitch Trubisky?
Yeah,
instead of Josh Allen. That's conceding a loss.
Yeah,
but no, but it's because Kansas City is unbeaten.
Yeah, I think
so. So if they were to, let's say, lose this game and then lose to Kansas City, they have absolutely no shot at the number 1 seed, barring an injury to Mahomes. Okay. But if they lose to Indianapolis and beat Kansas City, okay, then they have a realistic chance because they will have picked up a game on Kansas City, given Kansas City a loss, and still be stuck at 2, at worst 3 if they lose, and they could still beat. And certainly with their starting starting players, they've got a pretty good chance of beating Indianapolis.
Yeah, I think the only time I would consider resting is if it's a Thursday night game. And have a bunch of guys banged up.
Or maybe you play them at halftime and hope to get out to a 17-3 lead.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I think I would consider that. The Thursday night games see so many more injuries than regular games.
Yeah. Well, that's because it's not just that you don't have the preparation time because of the timing, but obviously, as we've alluded to before, you don't have enough time for the injuries to heal.
Right. It's
a lot of these players play with minor injuries all the time, and those injuries don't heal when you're taking the field on Sunday, and they may be aggravated a little bit to the point where maybe you can't play on Thursday because you need like 2 extra days. You need a full week's rest for the aggravation of what was already an injury that you played through.
Yeah. All right, let's get to the next game. We have Vikings at the Jaguars. This line shot up to 7 today because of the news that Trevor Lawrence may not play.
They're
Ian
thinking they may
Rappaport,
shut him down for the season.
Ian
I heard that
Rappaport said,
report.
Ian Rappaport said
Yeah.
he's unlikely to play. Lawrence is going to look at his options, so we don't know what's going to happen. I think this line is absurd. It's only 7. It only went up 2.5 points for Lawrence's downgrade to Mac Jones or CJ Beathard. I assume it's going to be Mac Jones, but I think this line should have been closer to 10 or not, maybe 9.5 or something. The downgrade from Lawrence to Mac Jones, I think, is so extreme, especially against this Minnesota defense, where I thought Trevor Lawrence had a great matchup against Brian Flores because he's so good against the blitz. 64% completion this year against the blitz, 69% completion in 2022 against the blitz, and he beat Brian Flores in his only matchup against him.
How much do you think Flores blitzed last week in the game against the Colts?
I don't have that exact number.
I don't think it was as much as we expected.
I don't know. But the Vikings are number 1 in blitz rate this year.
Yeah,
so that's why I brought that up. But with Mac Jones out there, I think the Jaguars just might just like wave the white flag and just not try very hard in this game. I don't, because they have nothing else going for them. They're already missing Christian Kirk. They have offensive line injuries. They traded Cam Robinson. Ezra Cleveland's probably not going to play. The defense is in shambles. I think the Vikings should win this easily. I already bet -7, -105 today. And I think this line could go up if the official announcement is made that Lawrence is out. So
I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. My concern is several folds. I mean, Jacksonville is a 2-7 team. Just talked about Miami. Jacksonville's not going to run the table, but if they run the table, they're 10-7, probably a wild card. But more likely this team ends up winning no more than 7 games, and probably that's a little bit too high. Maybe it's more like 4 or 5, if that. But one thing we have seen, Jacksonville has been competitive in a lot of games. They just couldn't close things out. Even the opening week of game against Miami, they had a nice lead, and Miami caught them at the end of the game to win 20-17. They didn't quit against Philadelphia last week. Philadelphia had that game covered easily, and Jacksonville comes back and makes it a 28-23 final. And not knowing, I don't know. Maybe you have some insight onto how the Jaguar players feel about Trevor Lawrence, as far as if they don't feel great about him, it's not as bad as the situation in Cleveland with Deshaun Watson, but maybe they've lost faith in Trevor Lawrence. And the thing about Mac Jones, okay, is how often have we seen it? Well, Baker Mayfield, for example. How many times have we seen a team or a quarterback go from one team where he had no success at all and all of a sudden become a competent NFL quarterback when he gets traded to the right team, the right system, etc.? Maybe the players play a little bit harder for Mac Jones than we might normally expect because, hey, we know we're not winning with Trevor Lawrence. Maybe we can give this kid a chance, and maybe he can do something for our season a little bit, at least maybe for the short term before teams start making adjustments. You also wonder, Minnesota's coming off of that the dull effort against the Rams, and then their effort last week against Indianapolis wasn't exactly outstanding. But they did enough to win and hold off the Colts, even though I think it was 21-10 when Indianapolis kicked the field goal at the end when they had a choice to go for it because they were down by 11. But they wanted to at least have a chance, if they got possession back, to have a chance to tie the game rather than have no chance being down by 11 and no time left or little time left. Might Minnesota be a little bit overconfident in this game and say, oh, we're going up against a guy who was a failure playing for the best coach of all time, and Bill Belichick? At least that's the narrative on that. And Jacksonville might still be playing hard. Minnesota might be comfortable with a win. If they're up 28 28-17 or something. And Jacksonville's throwing it down there, and they score get the old backdoor cover because Minnesota's just interested about the win. I certainly was prepared to lay 4 or 4.5, but certainly 4 had we not had this news and had the line not moved, because Minnesota's that much better than the Jaguars. But despite the record, I don't see that the Jaguars have quit. I still see the effort.
Yeah, we've seen the effort. I can't imagine that there's going to be that much effort. Like there's only so much a bad team can give, and we're going to see. I think we're going to see this team collapse because we've seen them get blown out against superior competition.
Buffalo on that Monday night. Was it the Monday night game?
Monday night game against Buffalo, and London against the Bears. Like it
Yeah.
seems like the Vikings are in that caliber. They're better.
Yeah, well, they're in between Buffalo and the Bears, but I think they're closer to the Bears.
Yeah, maybe. I think they're kind of equidistant from those two teams. I don't know. I mean, regardless, like this is a superior opponent, and I just like my rule with the backup quarterbacks is generally against mediocre or defense or bad defenses, they like teams tend to rally around them. Like you're right, but when they play elite defenses, they really tend to struggle. And I really can't see.
You consider the Vikings an elite defense?
Well, yeah, with Brian Flores,
or just a very good defense.
Well, I think Brian Flores can make bad quarterbacks look awful. By the way, Mac Jones against the Blitz last year, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions, and he was graded by PFF with a 30-point grade out of 100. So pretty bad. 6.3% turnover worthy plays.
Daniel Jones rate.
Yeah, exactly. So, Mac Jones, Daniel Jones, about the same.
My bottom line on this game is that, laying that many points on the road, there are better options out there. When you start getting above 7 points, the quarterback has not played as well lately as he did early in the season for the Vikings.
Yeah, that is true. Although maybe this matchup will be the cure that he needs.
Yeah.
So let's see. Where was this question that we had? Fade Aaron Jones in DFS and play Mac Jones. Don't play Mac Jones against this defense. Just don't. They're just better options out there.
In fantasy, absolutely not. Yeah. Well, again, it's like my thoughts on betting the game. There are better options out there.
Yes.
And almost any option is better than playing Mac Jones. In a fantasy league, the Jaguars have no choice on the field. Well, I guess they do with Beathard and the other kid.
Yeah, well, the thought in DFS is you're going to get Mac Jones very cheap. He's probably close to the minimum.
But there's a reason for that.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I don't think that it's worth it. All right, let's get.
Remember that the highly priced players are more capable of exceeding expectations than really bad players are in reaching expectations.
Yes, it's definitely
as a generalization.
Yeah, it's not like you're getting like Justin Fields at the minimum, where he can rush for a bunch of yards. Like you're getting Mac Jones. There's no upside there at all. Yeah. Like maybe he has a mediocre game, but still, like you're going to need.
I mean, the one stat you've said so far this evening that I found the most amazing was the stat you just gave about Matt Jones against the Blitz, that he had 1 touchdown.
Yeah, he beat the over on there of a half. He got there. Very nice.
I don't even think it was that high. I think it was a quarter.
Okay, quarter. Yeah. What would you?
Don't work too hard on that one, folks. Don't work too hard on that one.
All right. Next game, Pittsburgh, Washington. I found this funny because the line.
Best game of the week.
Yeah, the line went for 2.5 to 3 with the Marshawn Lattimore trade, and then it went back down to 2.5 because Lattimore hasn't practiced yet this week.
You're talking about the Saints. I thought you were talking about the. Oh, okay. The acquisition. I was talking about the team that traded him away. Yeah, Steelers. Washington. Yeah, Washington.
So Lattimore hasn't practiced yet. So he's still dealing with the injury. So they may have to wait a week for him to play.
Could be a game time decision.
Yeah, it could be. I just think that this is a tough game for me to handicap because on one hand, you have I think Washington's better than Pittsburgh, and but Mike Tomlin there. He's great as an underdog.
Well, you've been down on Pittsburgh all year.
I have,
and their numbers support that position, but that's one of those things that sometimes you just can't quantify why teams win with ordinary numbers. And I mean, Pittsburgh, I think they're being outgained on the year, and they've got a very good scoring differential.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I can't really. I don't trust. I don't trust Russell Wilson. Although I do like Mike Tomlin's an underdog, but then again at 2.5, there's not much room for error. And then with Washington, like I said, I think they're the better team. However, they play on Thursday night against the Eagles, which is such a big game for them. Could be a look ahead.
And not only that, they're at Dallas the following. Not that Dallas is a threat or anything, but it's still 2 divisional games back to back.
Sure, exactly. So I think this could be a trap spot for them. Evan on Tuesday didn't think so. He likes Washington a lot. I can't get there with either team, but with the 2.5, I think the play here is to tease Pittsburgh from 2.5 to 8.5. Outside of that, I don't have much here. Do you like this game?
I've seen threes on this game pop up from time to time, and I took Pittsburgh +3 in this game. These are 2 teams that, I don't think either of them had really great expectations at the start of the season. We don't know how good this Washington team can be. However, they're good enough right now that their odds to win the NFC are down to 9-1, which, and look, they could end up being, they could be the second best team to Detroit in the NFC. So I'm withholding San Francisco, with all the injuries, and see how they improve with McCaffrey. Although the defense is not at the level that it was last year. Pittsburgh, again, they find ways to win these games. Interestingly, if I have the numbers correct, Steelers are 2-0 straight up and against the spread as underdogs this year, and Washington is 5-0 straight up in ATS as favorites. I believe, in fact, let me check the numbers here. I mean, you can make a good case for either team here. Pittsburgh is 6-2 straight up and ATS. Washington 7-2 straight up, and depending upon what line, and I usually use the closing line at the Westgate, 7-1-1 against the spread. So both of these teams have been making you tons of money all year. That having been said, I was compelled to say, you know what? We got 2 teams. The line is right. They have both covered tremendously well all season. At +3, I'll take Pittsburgh. It's a game they could. The question I pose: would anyone be surprised if Pittsburgh wins the game 23-16? Would anyone be surprised if Washington wins the game 23-16?
No, not at all. Nothing would really surprise me here.
Yeah.
So I think Washington getting blown out.
And Pittsburgh, I think they're coming off their bye, aren't they?
Yeah. Mike Tomlin generally excellent coming off his bye, or at least that's what I've been told. I can actually look that up right now.
I've heard that. I think I've heard somewhere there's a very strong stat about, is it underdogs or road underdogs coming off a bye have been extremely successful over the last 4 or 5 years.
So Mike Tomlin is 10-7 against the spread off a bye, which is fine. Would you say road underdogs coming off a bye?
I think it's either underdogs or road underdogs. I'm not sure which it is.
Okay. Let me look that up real fast. Road underdog.
But that wouldn't influence me one way or the other, whatever the result. I mean, if there's 23-3, that might, but I already like the underdog.
Yeah. Since actually, I'm looking at this. Since I'm not getting it. Since 2021, 13-16 against the spread off a bye. Road underdogs.
Road underdogs in general. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's something else, but yeah. Let's get to the next game. So we have Falcons and Saints. Saints dealing with a lot of injuries.
Yeah, the other end of the Lattimore trade.
Yeah. Lattimore's gone, obviously. So the Kool-Aid McKinstry injury becomes very interesting because the Saints are already down 2 cornerbacks. So this could be number 3. Kool-Aid McKinstry was DNP twice so far this week, so it's not looking good for him. Also, Chris Olave is DNP twice as well, which is not a surprise at all, given that he suffered 2 concussions in 3 weeks. Kind of surprising that he's not put in IR, given that he was he got taken off on the stretcher.
If you're waiting for more than 2 weeks for a player to return, you've made a mistake.
Exactly, yeah. And Drake London limited twice this week. He has a hip pointer, so we'll see if he can play. This game also features the first time the Saints are going to play without Dennis Allen, who got fired. So that gives me interest in the Saints because generally when teams make coaching changes, if the coach is not liked, and I don't know, like Dennis Allen is very liked.
What did the Jets do when they got rid of Robert Saleh? Didn't they lose the next 2 games? I think.
Yeah, well, they lost the Monday night game against the Bills, but I think they outgained the Bills. I think they had.
Was that the next game? He was fired after the Minnesota game, right? The London game.
Yeah, it was the London game. Yep. And then so after that, they played. Yeah, that was the Monday night game against.
That was the 23-20 game.
Yeah, they outgained. Yeah, the Jets outgained the Bills 393 to 359 in that game. They averaged 0.7 more yards per play than Buffalo, but they missed those kicks, and Mike Williams ran the wrong route at the end. So
and got himself traded.
Right, exactly. So and plus Robert Saleh was liked by the team. Whereas
that's what I'm saying. I don't know about Dennis Allen.
Yeah, I don't think Dennis Allen was, and Dennis Allen was just a proven loser. Just 32. 32 and 50 against the spread in his career, which I can't imagine that changing forever for the rest of the eternity, because I don't think anyone else is going to give him a head coaching gig. But I like the Saints here reluctantly, just because I think they're going to play with more energy with the coaching change. Plus, Atlanta is coming off a couple big wins here. I don't know how flat they're going to be. I know this is a divisional matchup, but the Saints, they already beat the Saints, so. I think the Saints are going to play harder. These teams always play close games. It's always decided by 3. No matter
was the first one in overtime?
It was at the end of regulation. It's 27-25. The Falcons kicked the game-winning field goal at the end. And
that's right, because I laid the 1.5, I think, in one of the contests or something with the Falcons. I got fortunate.
Yeah, the Falcons, I believe, closed at -2.5 or something, and they won by 2. Yeah. And right before they kicked the game-winning field goal, Cousins had Mooney open for a touchdown, and he just overthrew him. I was so angry about that. So, no, I like the Saints here. Not crazy about this game, but I will bet it a little bit. What do you think here?
Well, the first, the dysfunction setting in with the Saints, combined with the injuries, okay? Made me first take a look at Atlanta, because this team is playing with a great deal of confidence right now. They are 6-3, but how can you lay 4 points for a team that, despite being 6-3, has outscored the opposition by just 5 points this season? That's what Atlanta has. 221 scored, 216 allowed. Makes it very, very difficult to lay points on the road. But I also have concerns about the Saints. Yeah, maybe they play, a little bit more because of the coaching change, but they have to be devastated after that loss to Carolina last week, especially since they were leading a good part of that game, and it puts them at 7 losses. Their season is essentially over, and I think they acknowledge that with trading of Lattimore. So you wonder what the players are thinking about. Do we really go out and play hard, and so the team can get a higher draft choice that might cost me my job? I don't know that they think like that, but I don't know if because of the combination. The combination of having lost when they were a solid favorite against Carolina, combined with the fact that that was their 7th loss of the season, not to mention 7 in a row. Maybe it's reversed. It was their 7th straight loss, not to mention their 7th loss of the season. That their season is all but over, and maybe this is another one of those close games, and maybe if I had to play the game, and again, it's not one that I have to play, but if I had to. I would lean, I think, a little bit more towards taking the points with the Saints.
Okay, yeah, like I said, not one of my top plays, but I do like the Saints here.
I know a number of people who like the over in the game as well.
Okay, I wish the Saints were a little bit healthier. I'd be more comfortable taking them, but the 3 injured cornerbacks just scares me a lot.
Well, I think that may be why there's been some enthusiasm for the over.
It's true. Yeah, if Drake London is out, then I'd feel a lot better about it. But he actually might miss this game with the hip pointer, so we'll see. All right, so we move on. We have Broncos at Chiefs. This line's either 8 or 7.5, depending on where you look right now. Remarkably, there are no major injuries here, except for, I don't know if you want to classify Juju Smith-Schuster as a major injury. He's the only one who really stood out in the injury report as DNP twice. Everyone else.
Only because he is experienced.
Yeah, and he had that one big game on Monday night, and then he hasn't played since. So
But considering the fact that there are no other significant injuries, that injury in and of itself may not be all that significant in the scheme of things.
Exactly. Yeah, you want to look for cluster injuries when you're looking at the injury reports. So you don't have that here, obviously. So I'm on the Chiefs here. Not going to bet the game. I just worry about the Chiefs, covering the spread, covering high spreads during the regular season.
Oh, they've been backdoored a lot the last month or so.
Yeah, by Gardner Minshew included.
Yeah.
So it could happen again. That's what worries me here. But I do think that the Chiefs match up well against the Broncos here. If you look at the Chiefs defense, which is excellent, they're weak in two spots. They're weak to number 2 receivers, and they're weak to tight ends. Who on Denver can take advantage of that? They have their number 2 receiver. It just keeps rotating. 1 week it's little Jordan Humphrey.
Yeah.
1 week it's Devon Vele. 1 week it's Troy Franklin. Like, none of these guys are good. At tight end, they have someone named Lucas Krull who caught no passes last week. They can't take advantage of Kansas City's weaknesses.
And you got Spagnuolo very familiar with the Broncos because of the fact that they play twice a year.
Exactly. So
he's very familiar with the personnel.
Right. So I think the Chiefs win this game. I don't know if they cover. If I had to bet this, I would take the Chiefs. Yeah, but we don't have to bet every game, as you say. Although the main play here is teasing the Chiefs down from 8 to 2 or 7.5 to 1.5. Yeah,
that's exactly what I was going to say. That the first play that came to mind was teasing them down. Mm-hmm. And if the line somehow goes down, or maybe you consider buying it down to 7, that wouldn't be a terrible thing to do, because I don't know that. Broncos have been playing well, and I've been on the Broncos a lot over the last 5-6 weeks. But last week was not one of them, because I didn't know how they were going to do when they stepped up in class to face a team like Baltimore, and we saw the result. Now, overall, Baltimore and Kansas City. Kansas City clearly has the edge this year on defense, but Baltimore, I think, has shown that they clearly have the edge on offense. I'm not so sure that Denver can have any greater success against the Kansas City defense than they had against the Baltimore defense. It's still a decent defense, but not at the level of past years, and I've talked about it. We saw it again tonight. Great defense against the run. I'll be generous and say average defense against the pass, and that is being kind, because I do think they rank like number 30 against the pass using some of the basic metrics. So if I could get 7, I would strongly consider playing it, because I don't know. In back-to-back weeks, the Broncos are playing 2 of the best teams, maybe the 2 best teams in the AFC, back-to-back, which is very, very difficult, and both on the road. Okay, yep. That's also a consideration. But I think you just mentioned what I think the best play is in that game, and that's teasing the Chiefs down. And if it's at 7.5, and you can tease them under 1, that's with just a 6-point teaser. That's great.
Yeah. Jesse has full PPR, Sutton or Ridley this week. I would go Ridley. Sutton is going to get the Spagnuolo treatment, which, look up how number 1 receivers have done against Kansas City this year. They've been smothered. So I would avoid that. Ridley as not a great matchup, but I think slightly positive matchup. Cedric Tillman did well against the Chargers last week. All right, so we move on to 49ers Buccaneers. I bet this game already. This line has moved to 6.5. I got -6 this morning, and I wanted to bet this because Baker Mayfield may miss this game. He has a toe injury. He has not practiced this week. Now, they're saying that he will probably practice, but I just wanted to get ahead of this because, if he's out, this line is going to skyrocket to, I don't know, 10.5. So I wanted to get -6. But the Buccaneers have other injuries. So Mike Evans has not practiced yet. That's not a surprise. Jordan Whitehead has also not practiced. So that would be a big loss in the secondary that's already missing Jamel Dean. I think the Niners are just so much better than Tampa. And Tampa played its heart out against the Chiefs. They went to overtime. They have to be exhausted on a short week. And now they have this Niner team coming off a bye. Such a big rest advantage for San Francisco. And if the Buccaneers had their receivers, they could get a backdoor cover here or just even be competitive against the Niners. But, with no Evans, no Godwin, and some of their other receivers have been DNP as well. Sterling Shepard has not practiced yet. He was, I believe, their leading wide receiver last week in yardage, and he has not practiced yet either. So this team is just a disaster. I think people might forget how bad of the situation they're in because they were close on Monday night, which, again, the Chiefs almost never blow anyone out here. So I think the Niners.
Have you heard any insight into what the players thought about the decision to go for 2?
I haven't heard anything about that.
Because if they were despondent and saying we would have preferred to take our chances in overtime, because players think they can win every game, and do it, or if they say, we're going to support our coach, and it was 50-50, he decided to do it, we just didn't execute, on to the next week. because
no,
if they're really down on that, that could have a carryover effect if they've come to grips with it and can get over it. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to be competitive or do anything, but it's a lot nicer knowing going in that they're okay with the coach, that they're all on the same page. May not make a difference, but it's a lot better than knowing if there's internal disagreements.
Well, I mean, they went to overtime. I think they support. I think they support Todd Bowles. I think they view him favorably. So, but anyway, I like the Niners a lot here. I already bet them at -6. Where are you coming in on this game?
I was leaning towards Tampa Bay until the situation about the quarterback Mayfield became a little bit more serious than initially thought. But I'm a little concerned about because I also like the over in the game, but we really haven't seen much movement in that. Well, let me see where it is right now. I know it was about 50 or so back earlier in the week, and right now I'm showing that game at. Still, in fact, it actually came up from the advanced line of 47.5, which was a 10-day line. So the fact that there are questions about Mayfield and we know about the other injuries and the total hasn't moved is surprising, to say the least, because when you go from a Mayfield to a backup, that's, I'd say that's worth at least a field goal as far as the total goes. Maybe even 4 points, because when I look at when you take out quarterbacks, I don't necessarily put points per se, but do you end up losing one possession that ends up in 0 points that might have been 3 points that might have ended up 7, or 7 that maybe you could have ended up getting even more with an elite quarterback. So it's certainly which I think would be reflected in the point spread move, but not in the total. There's something that I just can't grasp as to why we saw the significant move, or at least a decent move, over a key number of 6. I've seen 6.5s out now with absolutely no corresponding move on the total.
It's an interesting question. I don't know. Yeah, it's very strange, but I do like San Francisco here. All right, let's get to the last of the early games. We have Patriots at the Bears. I like the Bears here. So first of all, the injuries. The good news is Montez Sweat returned to a full practice today. The bad news is Darnell Wright and Jaquan Brisker have been DNP twice, but I still like the Bears.
Is that like 3 or 4 weeks with Brisker?
Yeah, it's been a while. Like,
why didn't he go on IR?
Exactly. You mentioned like 2 weeks they should be on IR. This guy's been like more than a month already. Very, very strange that he's not been on IR, but
yeah, it's not strange that they didn't do it earlier. Now he may very really, now it doesn't pay to put him on IR because, first of all, they might have admitted that it was a mistake by doing so, that they didn't do it sooner, and he's 1 week closer to being ready.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't get it, but anyway, I think this is a great rebound spot for the Bears. They got blown out last week against Arizona, which was a very strange game because it started raining hard and then hailing in Arizona. And Charles Davis on the broadcast said that Arizona had such a big advantage because they were at home and they had all their equipment, so they could change cleats, whereas Chicago couldn't change their cleats, and so they're dropping.
But the question is, did they change cleats?
The Cardinals.
The fact that they could doesn't mean that they did. Were you able to find out if they did?
No, but I mean the Bears were the team slipping all over the field, and they were dropping passes. They did not seem prepared for this situation. So you could blame the coaching staff for that. But
was that maybe a letdown from the way the Washington game ended?
That's what I was also thinking. That they lost in the Hail Mary.
Although you would think 6 days later you would get over that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, every team's gonna be different. They could have won the game and they blew it, and the mindset could have been different. If in a team that's poorly coached, probably bounces back very poorly from something like that. But coming off a blowout loss, they were humiliated. Like, Arizona just rammed the ball down their throat all afternoon. I think they come back here with a much better effort against a New England team that's awful. The Patriots just went to overtime, so they're going to be exhausted. Traveling off of that, and I think this is a great spot for Chicago. I think. The line is I think pretty short at -6. I think it should be a lot higher, given the disparity between these two teams. So, who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I'm with you, and I think everything you said is something that I'm totally in agreement with. I think there's a good spot for Chicago. I don't really think all that much of the Patriots. They've gotten their their second win of the season, was it a couple of weeks ago against the Jets?
Mm-hmm.
And then they went to overtime. I don't know how much playing an extra, 8 to 10 snaps in overtime affects you that much more than the 54 that you played in regulation, a week later. But it is something to be to be cognizant of. How much weight you place on that, can vary. But yeah, it's a good spot for Chicago, and I like the way that they match up in this contest against New England. And New England has gotten rid of a lot of players, so they've clearly shown that this is a let's say a preparation for more rebuilding.
Yeah, I think so as well. All right, let's get to the late afternoon games. First one is Titans at the Chargers. This line's 7.5. So a lot of people I respect have the Titans here. I do not. I have the Chargers. Khalil Mack was DNP twice. If he is out, then I'm slightly concerned. But again, it's not a cluster injury because Joey Bosa is back. So Tony Pollard was downgraded today to miss practice. The Jerry Sneed DNP twice. That's another guy who's been out for a while. But they didn't put him on IR. I think Tennessee is awful. They're coming off an overtime win, which I think, like, you do make a good point about, maybe overtime is a little overblown. But I think that the more pressing thing here is that Tennessee is an awful team coming off a victory. And anytime you have a really bad team with success, they usually struggle to sustain that success. And I think they could just suffer a big loss here to the Chargers. And if this were the Chargers of last year with Brandon Staley coaching them, there's no way that they'd cover this spread. But Jim Harbaugh is such a great coach. He prepares this team every week. Every week they've been sharp this year. Even in their
they've already exceeded last year's 5 wins.
Yeah, even in some of their losses, like they lost to the Steelers earlier in the year. That was when Justin Herbert got hurt. Yeah. They lost to the Chiefs. They kept that game close, even though half their roster was out. Like this team is very impressive. They've blown out several teams this year, all bad quarterbacks. The Chargers are ranked 3rd in defensive EPA, and anytime you have a bad quarterback going against a top 5 defense, it's going to be trouble. I just don't see how Tennessee scores in this game, especially if Pollard misses. I like the Chargers here a lot. I think they take it to Tennessee, win easily. So who do you like here?
Oh, this is another one that immediately comes to mind to hook up in the teaser with Kansas City. But let's put it this way. What should be any different about this game than the one they played 2 weeks ago at home against New Orleans? What was that, 26-8? Or the game they played last week at Cleveland, which was 27-10? Exactly. I mean, this team just has they've given up yards, but what are they giving up? I think they're still number 1 or 2 in the league, giving up like 12 points per game. I mean, they do enough. And remember, they were even in the game in Denver. That was 23-16. That was 23-0, I think, at halftime. Right. And Denver got all their scores, afterwards. So, yeah, is Tennessee, I don't know if you want to say better or worse, but when you take a look, certainly at the offense, any better than New Orleans in the condition they were in 2 weeks ago? Maybe, certainly not as good, I think, as the Cleveland team that couldn't score more than 10 points, and I think they got 7 of them late in the game against, with Winston last week, who didn't play a good game, a little bit of it, but nonetheless, Tennessee. How does Tennessee? If I compare, even just on talent alone, Tennessee, the Saints, and the Cleveland Browns, I have to put Tennessee 3rd, and perhaps by a decent margin. Certainly against the Browns, and to a certain extent against Tennessee, again, like New Orleans. Was Carr back in that game against the Chargers 2 weeks ago, or was it last week that he made his return?
Yeah, Rattler played for the Saints in that game. I would say that the Titans are like a bad version of the Browns, which is funny to say because the Browns aren't a good team. But they are, like, they just do everything a little bit worse than that.
Well, the Browns are a team that won 10 games last year. Of course, they got blown out at Houston in the playoffs. But and of course, a lot of it, the quarterback who engineered those 10 wins is now, starting in Indianapolis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if Jameis Winston had started the entire year instead of Deshaun Watson,
2 or 3 more wins.
Yeah, I think they'd win. I think they'd be 4-5 right now instead of 2-7. So. Yeah, like I do like even though the Titans and the Browns pretty much have the same record, the only difference is that Tennessee had its bye already. I think that saying that would make a lot of sense because Cleveland had 2 more wins. So,
well, also the other thing I think is that Cleveland's defense, as far as consistency goes, is not at the level it was last year. Now, maybe that has to do because they got to bail the offense out a lot more this year. But the performance is certainly the numbers are down considering. Or I guess when you talk about defense, the numbers are up because they're higher than last year as far as what they've allowed.
Right, exactly. And Tennessee's defense would be a lot better too if their players were healthy. Heading into the year, they had Chidobe Awuzie and L'Jarius Sneed on the outside, and I thought, like, hey, this team could be competitive. Like, how are the teams going to throw on the outside? But Chidobe Awuzie has been out since I think week 4. He's on IR.
I wonder what message was sent to the players when they traded Derrick Henry away.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a running back, but he's not every running back is done at the age of 30.
Yeah, they did get Pollard though. They paid a lot of money for Tony Pollard, so yeah, but I mean
I can't compare Pollard to Henry.
Yeah,
other than he's younger.
I do like Pollard, but he may miss this game. Like I said, he was down,
and especially by the way, because Henry, which is a rare exception, was so strong in the second half of games, which is unlike the pattern that most running backs display.
Yeah, he's just how he does that is incredible. So. Although I will say that like last year they did not use Henry all that much. Like they gave a lot of touches to Tajay Spears. Yeah. It seemed like they thought that Henry was done, which just got to wonder about the player evaluation on that team.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, that's they thought Will Levis was the answer.
Exactly. All right.
I mean, again, and he may still be because you look at guys like Darnold, you look at guys like Mayfield, who journeyman for a little bit, and all of a sudden, Jameis Winston to a certain extent, had success when he left Tampa Bay. So, I wouldn't totally write off, the quarterback quite yet, Levis, but now he's dealing with injuries as well.
Yeah. Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield, both good.
Yeah, Geno Smith's a great example.
Yeah, so coaching can make such a big difference, and it doesn't seem like Tennessee has good coaching. All right, Eagles at the Cowboys. So the interesting here, so a lot of injury news here. AJ Brown was considered day-to-day, but he practiced fully today, so sounds like he's going to be back. It was reported that Devontae Smith missed practice today, but he was limited. Turns out, Micah Parsons looks like he's going to come back. He's been limited both times. But
he's been looking at he's another one that we've been talking about the last 2 weeks. They thought he was going to play.
Yeah. He said, exactly. He said 2 weeks ago he was going to play. He hasn't played since, but this seems like the time he's going to come back. Dak Prescott, though, DNP twice, not a surprise. Deron Bland, DNP twice. CeeDee Lamb is week to week rather than day to day. He's been limited twice. So I wouldn't count on him playing this week. So maybe he comes back next week. So initially I was kind of wishy-washy on this game because the Eagles have to play against Washington on Thursday. But the more I thought about it, and Evan kind of convinced me on Tuesday's show, I think the look ahead was not this to Washington. I think it was Jacksonville in the second half to this and Washington. The Eagles hate the Cowboys. The last time they saw the Cowboys, Dallas humiliated them last year in Dallas. I think the Eagles will play hard in this game. And I was waiting on the injury news for the receivers. If both guys were out, I would have no interest here. But A.J. Brown practicing fully will put me on the Eagles. And, the selling point here is something I referenced before, where you have a backup quarterback against a great defense. The Eagles, they started slowly defensively this year. But ever since the bye week, their defense is ranked 4th in defensive EPA. They've gotten so much better. And it's not a surprise because they have a lot of talent. They had Vic Fangio. It took a little while to gel, but they've done it. Their young quarterbacks have improved a lot. Cooper DeJean's playing great. Quinion Mitchell's playing very well also. This Eagles team is legit. And if they're healthy, which it seems like they are, I don't see how Dallas competes with them. And this could be a game where Dallas kind of gives up. So I like the Eagles. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I'd like to try and make a case for taking the points with Dallas, not for anything Dallas, but the Eagles have trouble. Another team letting teams hang around. I know that it's Dallas, and if they could beat them 53-3, they would like to, and they'd probably complain about giving up a field goal if they did. But I just can't get there with Dallas. But I certainly can't lay it with with the Eagles. Maybe, well, and again, we don't know the full status of the receivers, but maybe I'll look over the total in this one if I do anything. I suppose just based on, and you can't really base on numbers because they can't fully compensate for all the injuries and everything. But just looking at that number, and again, seeing what the Eagles do, and again with the big game against Washington up next. Maybe Dallas has some sort of ability with a rush to get a backdoor cover in this game because Philadelphia has done that several times. The most recent one was last week against Jacksonville. Dallas obviously under a lot of pressure because of all their poor performances at home this year. The blowouts to Detroit, the blowout earlier to the Saints. And that was with Prescott and other healthy players in there at the time, including I think Micah Parsons. Who, as far as I know, plays defense that gave up all those points.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that I can get there. Maybe this is one, and maybe you throw it into as a third team, teasing the Eagles down with the Chiefs and the Chargers.
Yeah, I think you can kind of mix and match.
And by the way, what you would do in a situation like that is, what a three-team teaser plays. Do the math and figure out what a three-team money line parlay would pay when you're looking at laying just 1 or 1.5, or even a half. Well, you wouldn't be laying a half; it'd be pick 'em. But because sometimes usually it's right on target. Because they said that they have some correlation between they know what the payoff is on a three-team, 6.5, 7-point teaser, and the money lines. I think the money lines in those type of games. Well, the teaser prices have long been established. They varied from year to year with the VIG, but the point spreads I think are pretty much set in the same way that we know that there's not going to be a huge difference. But sometimes you can earn a few bucks more by doing the money line. Sometimes you can earn a few bucks more based upon the money lines, because the money lines will be more. The teaser price generally won't be variable. Okay,
Yeah.
if the regular line is minus 120. It won't be factored in any differently in the in the point spread in the teaser payout. But the money line can vary, from shop to shop, where you may get a little bit of an advantage or disadvantage depending upon where you would parlay the three money lines.
Yeah, and if you do these two-team teasers, I say this every week just to kind of reinforce it. Make sure these games start at different times. So. Yep. Rather than teasing the Steelers and the Chiefs, do one of them and then do either the Eagles or the Chargers, because what you can do is if you win the first leg of your teaser, you can try to middle it. So, for example, if you have Chiefs minus 1.5 along with Eagles minus 1.5, you can, if you win that first leg, you can bet Dallas plus 7 and then try to middle it, which, just has great payouts. So.
By the way, I saw that comment where somebody threw in the 49ers in the teaser as well.
Yeah.
And now, there's another one. And now that the line has hit 6 and gone above 6, where you could tease it down to basically, minus a half or even plus a half, depending upon where you go if the line goes down. I don't like teasing across 0, because 0, what's the number of overtime games, or maybe like. Or games that end in ties, not so much overtime games, although they would be overtime games. Was it 2% or something? There are maybe no, it's less than that, because I think every few years there may be a game or two that are tied, and some years there are no ties. So you're giving up a number when you're teasing over 0. But if you can tease down to basically pick them, that's a little bit different, because at least you would push if the game ends in a tie.
Yeah, and in the past 10 years, there have been 4 ties. So, yeah, you're not getting much out of that. I completely agree. You don't want to tease through 0. Question, would you trade Brian Thomas Jr. for Debo? I also have Christian McCaffrey. Yes. With Trevor Lawrence being potentially out for the year, absolutely, 100%. Just do it right away.
No the only time I might consider teasing across 0 is at the very low numbers. Go from minus. Well, I don't know. I go from minus 1 to plus 5, but I might go from minus 2 to plus 4.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you're getting the 3.
That's probably still not mathematically correct, but considering you've got on the plus side, because if you're laying 2, you've already got a 3-point win covered, and if you're getting plus 4, you've got a 3-point loss covered.
Yeah.
And remember, 3-point. And remember, when you're looking at that, the number 3 comes up. I think it's about 18%. Yes. But part of the time is when the underdog wins by 3. As well as the favorite winning by 3. I think it's like maybe 11% for the favorite and 7% for the underdog, or something like that, when games end in 3.
Yeah, it's 15%. Looks like on 3. I have all these margins
Yeah.
saved here, and it also depends what the spread is. So like if
Yeah.
like a line from 0 to 5.5, it's likely to land on 3 about like 16.3% of the time.
But how much time is that when it's the favorite that wins by 3?
Right.
If the underdog wins by 3, it's not going to matter.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. But if the line is higher, if it's 6 to 7, it's 13%. If it's 7.5 to 10, it's 11%. Actually, 10.
Which makes sense.
Right. Exactly.
Plus,
Yeah.
the greater the spread, the greater the difference, the perceived difference between the teams, and the less likely that that game is going to be as competitive as a game where the line is say 4.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Exactly.
four is a good example because if you're up 23-20, the team can kick a field goal. If you're if you're up 24-20, the other team has to go for a touchdown. So that makes 3 and 4 are very important numbers because a lot of games come down to being ahead, being behind by 3, or being behind by 4, which calls for 2 totally different approaches to how you handle that drive.
I may have asked you this already, but do you know the fourth most likely result of any NFL game? So it's 3, 7, and 6 are the 3 most likely results.
I seem to recall 10 being close.
10 is the 5th most likely result.
Okay, so what was it? 3? Give me the numbers again. 3,
3, 7, and 6 are the 3 most likely results.
I would say 4 would be the other one.
No, it's not 4.
So one or 2?
No, it's not you wouldn't think this until
14.
14, yeah,
Okay.
14, because that's the big spreads are usually 14. So it makes sense. Yeah, 14. Jesse got it there.
By the way, how far back are you looking at?
Since so I went back to I think 2015. I think that was the year, because that's when they changed the rules in overtime and also the extra point rules. So
okay, yeah,
I made sure I encompassed both on that.
What was the overtime change in that one? Was that when they shortened it from 15 to 10 minutes?
No, the overtime change is when they said the team that if there's a field goal, they keep going.
Okay. It was that long ago. Wow, I didn't realize it was that long ago.
Yeah, it was like 2015, 2016. I think it was 2015. Yeah, it was. Yeah, because teams are now incentivized more to go for a touchdown. Max, he's a round 7 keeper though. Yeah, you didn't. So yeah, didn't tell me that. Yeah, I would not trade unless you think you can win this year. I would not do it. You have the percentage of -3 landing right on 3. So of a -3 landing, yes, I do. It is 15.95%. So yeah. So let's go to the next game, which is the Jets at the Cardinals. So this line has been moving a lot toward the Jets. The Arizona opened as a favorite, I think about 1.5. Now the Jets are favored by 1.5. I don't really have much on this game. No real injury news. CJ Mosley's been DNP twice, but I don't think anyone really expected him to play. I have no feeling for this game. I know Cassandra is pretty big on the Jets in the chat, but I can't figure this game out. Hopefully you have something here. I just I'm looking at these two teams. I rate them pretty equally. And I really don't see any motivational edges or anything like that. No real matchup edges. Well, I think both teams match up well against each other. So nothing really stands out to me here. So you have any take on this game?
Well, let's see. The Jets were favored against Tennessee and New England, one on the road, one on the home early in the year, weeks 2 and 3. They won and covered that, but look at who they were playing, New England and Tennessee. The following week, and it was horrible weather. They were 8.5-point favorites over Denver, and they lost outright in that one. That was an ugly 10-9 game. The next 2 times they were favored, or even in this price range, they were a 1-point dog at Buffalo. At home against Buffalo, I think they may have even been favored earlier in the week. They lost that one outright. Everyone loved them the following week, making them a 2.5-point favorite at the close at Pittsburgh. They lost that one outright. In fact, 37-15. Although it wasn't. Well, yeah, I think what did the Pittsburgh score? 20-something unanswered points or something in that game. They lost outright as a favorite to New England. So they were favored twice and lost. And last week they beat Houston. So and they do have extra rest. But I don't understand the fascination with continuing to make the Jets a favorite. I happen to have liked Arizona at -1 in this game. So clearly I like them at +1.5. Well, how much that's going to matter. Arizona's won 3 games in a row, I think, for the first time since they started 7-0. I think that was back in 2021. They are now in first place in the very mediocre NFC West, where they're 5-4. I think you got a couple of 4-4, and then there's a 4-5 team in there. So they're certainly right now in contention. Not so much for a wild card, but probably the division title. And remember, they already have wins over San Francisco and the Rams from earlier this season. So this is a highly motivated team. The Jets, 3-6, not out of the playoff picture, certainly for a wild card, but the road is going to be very difficult. And they've still got a couple of games, I believe, with Miami, and they've got a couple of other games this year. I know they've got a Buffalo rematch up there, but the players aren't thinking 3 weeks ahead. They're thinking about this week against Arizona. Rodgers arguably played his best game as a Jet last week with the 3 touchdown passes, the 2 to Wilson, the 1 to the Adams. And the Jets do have a decent defense, but I like the way this Arizona team has played. Another coach that I like in his second year. I like the efforts that we've seen defensively, some improvement in recent weeks. Remember, this is a team that shut down, I forget who it was, that played better defense. Well, that's the exception rather than the rule. Jets, of course, have a very good defense. I like Kyler Murray. He's having arguably one of the best years of his career, and that might be a bit of a difference here. So I do like Arizona in this game. I'm not sold on the Jets. It's going to take more than one effort. They do have the extra week, but they still have to show on the field that what we saw out of the Jets last week was more indicative of what they are and what they will be than what we saw basically for the 7 weeks preceding that.
I feel the same way. I think the Jets are, they have a lot of talent, but they're so poorly coached that, it's going to be hard to harness that talent. But what's I think tripping me up here is that the Jets have basically a mini bye, and I wonder if they were able to use that mini bye to get Rodgers to be more comfortable with his receivers. So,
well, yeah, he helped the Jets get rid of one of them.
Exactly. So, yeah, I just wonder if they're going to be playing better after this mini bye. But if there's no real improvement, then I think you're right about Arizona. I am leaning toward Arizona, but I don't really have a good feel for this game.
I just want to see who the Jets have coming up next. They have Indianapolis at home, then a bye, then a Seattle game. Then it's a manageable schedule, but the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season, they finish at Miami, at Jacksonville, a winnable game, at home to the Rams. We don't know. At Buffalo, that could have major implications for both teams, and they host Miami at the end. So the schedule is a little bit difficult. This is a game that they could win, but again, as I mentioned, right now we know that Arizona is in contention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, they've been impressive this year. So all right. So anyway, we have.
By the way, I wouldn't be shocked if the Jets win the game, but again, the lines makers know all this, and they opened Arizona a favorite, and I just don't see the enthusiasm. I would have expected this line to move up, maybe to 2 or 2.5 Arizona. So I'm really surprised. But then again, I'm not surprised because they've been doing it the last several weeks where they've been making the Jets favorite or increased them when they were favorites, and they've come up short. I mean, the loss to New England was really inexcusable to the extent that the defense was what let them down at the end of the game after Rodgers got them the lead.
Yeah, no, the defense did not do well. They allowed that touchdown drive to Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah.
And then the field goal unit just really messed them up. There are 2, you can even argue 3 games, although the one against the Broncos and the rain, I don't really blame Zerline for that one. But the game against Buffalo and also the game against the Patriots, if he just makes his field goals, they probably win those games. And
he still has a job.
Better. Right. He still has a job, and they're looking better at 5-4 rather than 3-6. So Friesel asking, trade Brian Robinson, Jaden Reed, Darnell Mooney for Cooper Kupp and Ramondre Stevenson. I don't know. I don't think I'd do that. I mean, Cooper Kupp.
Well, let me before one of the things I think that before I forget, we don't know about Dak Prescott. Right now, he may return, but he also may be out for the season, in which case you're going to get Cooper Kupp and have him for what, 8-9 weeks. We don't know, but it has to be considered given the extent of the injury as being a factor in making your decision here.
No, Cooper Kupp, not CeeDee Lamb. So I think that's who you think of. No, I Cooper Kupp, like I think he's the best player in this trade, but he's so injury prone. I don't really trust it. I'd rather have those three guys, especially if London's going to miss time with that hip pointer. Mooney's going to look a lot better.
But how do you do a 3-for-2 trade?
I think you could just do it in your fantasy leagues. It could be possible.
Because don't you have a set limit on roster size?
Yeah, it means the person getting the 3 would have to cut someone, so you might as well include that person in the trade. So
the guy getting 2, I guess, would have to pick someone up.
Yeah. So probably pick up the person who's dropped. Just put the.
You can't do that the same week, though, can you?
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
In your leagues, usually you have to wait till the next waiver period so everyone has an equal shot.
Well, generally, how we do it, like there's a waiver period on Tuesday night. It's Monday night and Tuesday night as well. And then it depends how much. If you have a salary cap for waivers, some leagues do that. I do that in one of my leagues. But yeah, it's as of Wednesday morning, it's a free for all. So.
Can you waive anybody after Wednesday morning? That's the question.
Yeah, you can waive any. Yeah, you can waive someone, and then the person who's waived, they go on waivers. But everyone who was not picked up during the waiver period, they can be picked up right away. So yeah, that's how that's done. Cintron says the only real edge I see the Jets have is they need a win. Not much of an edge, but I can't play this game. It was the
they've needed wins since week 3.
Yeah.
Well, week 4 when they were 2-2.
Yeah, I loved quoting the late Dave Koken on this one. He used to say, if a team needs to win, generally they're not good enough to begin with. So
right. See, which by the way is a point for late in the season where it's like, well, this team needs a win to clinch a playoff spot. Well, that's different. That's a team that's playing well and maybe just lost a couple of tough games, but they played well enough to be in the position, as opposed to needing a win to improve to 4-7 or something like that. There are different degrees of needing to win.
Exactly.
You need to win to get the number 1 seed. That's fine. You're already in the playoffs. You're probably the number 2 seed. So it's not necessarily a need to win in the normal sense of thinking of the word need. It'd be a benefit to win because you would improve yourself. But as far as being invited to, as Bill Parcells says, the tournament, you're already in.
Right. Exactly. All right, let's get to the Sunday night game. We have the Lions at the Texans. I had aspirations of betting the Texans early in the week because, throughout last week, all I heard was like, oh, Nico Collins is in good shape right now. He's ready to go. He hasn't practiced yet. So I don't know if he's going to play at this point.
And by the way, they are off that bye as well as the Jets. Same, obviously same game.
Right. So I thought, coming off that loss on, quote unquote, national streaming TV, whatever you want to call it. And then you also had Nico Collins coming back. I thought the Texans would look pretty good here. You had Detroit at Minnesota a couple weeks ago. Detroit won by 2. They would not have covered the spread. And I kind of, with Houston, with Nico Collins, I view them pretty equally with Minnesota, or about the same. So I thought this number would be a little bit high. But now that Nico Collins...
By the way, keep in mind with that Minnesota game, that was also a divisional game for the two teams.
Yeah, that's true.
As far as Detroit not covering was the divisional game, which is a lot more familiarity and things like that, and we played probably with a greater intensity than a game like this might be normally played.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely true. I think Houston with Collins would be pretty comparable, but if there's no Collins, suddenly Houston's offense is going to struggle because they run the ball so much. They run the ball in first and second down more than any other.
And wasn't Stroud not quite as effective before Collins went out, that he started to show signs of what has been his recent form?
Oh yeah.
Or did it all begin with the first game Collins missed?
Yeah, it was in that Buffalo game that Collins got hurt. In the first half, the Texans went up big, and then the second half they almost blew that
No.
lead. That was the game where Josh Allen went bombs away from his own 3 yard line because I thought he suffered a concussion. They said he didn't. So that was just a weird game. But yeah, ever since then, Houston has not been as great offensively, and now Stephon Diggs is out too. So if Collins can't return, it's only Tank Dell, who is really not 100% because he is dealing with an injury and he also got shot in the offseason. So defensively, though, Houston maybe without Will Anderson, he missed practice Wednesday and Thursday. So you have to watch out for that too. If there's no Collins and no Anderson, I will be on Detroit. If both guys play, and I think Collins is 100%. Like if he returns to practice and is full on Friday, I will have more confidence here in Houston. But right now, I can't back Houston with knowing these injuries. So my play will be dictated by what we see on the injury report on Friday. So right now, I'm leaning toward Detroit, but that injuries could change that. So what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, well, I think with the given is that Diggs is out.
Yeah.
So that maybe Tank gets to fill that in a little bit more regularity for a bit of time, but and of course Collins makes a big difference as well. Because Houston's a team I like, but right now I don't want to go against this Detroit team. I mean, they are just they right now are they are this week's team to beat in the NFC, which changes from week to week. Buffalo was the team to beat in the AFC for a while, then it was Baltimore, now it's well, maybe it's still Baltimore in the AFC, but I don't want to go against Detroit, and I'll probably be on them, especially if you get the news that Collins and or Anderson, but more likely Collins, is going to play, and this line probably goes down to 3. Possibly you can even squeeze a 2.5 out of it. We've seen that move. What we see last week when I think we saw a little bit of a movement in the line in the Green Bay Detroit game when Love was confirmed to be the starter. So at that point, I certainly will be on Detroit. But if I play the game, I would not be uncomfortable laying the even 3.5 with Detroit. They also made a big defensive pickup this week with who was it? Smith from Cleveland.
Yeah, Zadarius Smith.
Yeah, the edge rusher.
Yeah, Zadarius Smith, who, by the way, he's been DMP twice in practice with a personal matter. I wonder if he's it's called a mover or something.
Yeah, I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. So I suspect he's going to play. That was a nice pickup. He's obviously no Aiden Hutchinson, but he's a pretty solid edge rusher. He's gonna help out a lot.
Yeah, and I think I think if I recall, he's having a decent season.
Yeah. I think it's
the numbers that I've seen.
He has 5 sacks. So
which is a pace for 11.
Yeah,
for a season, which is a decent number.
Yeah, quality pickup for Detroit.
Yeah, so I do like Detroit in this game. After line were 4.5, I might think a little bit differently, but it wouldn't be heading in that. Well, I guess it could move up a little bit if Collins and or both are determined not to play, but we might not know that till Sunday morning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
But I just don't want to go against Detroit now until it's like we saw the impact after. Well, I think it was was it after the Minnesota game that they walloped Dallas?
Yeah,
after that close game.
Yeah, I think it was the week before.
There was a bye involved at some point there. I think it was before the Minnesota game, or maybe right after the Minnesota game. I think that's when. Yeah,
they had a week 5 bye, and then they had Dallas. They were 47-9, and then they had the Minnesota game, and then Tennessee, and then Green Bay.
And Tennessee was the 225-yard game where they put up 52 points because of the special teams and all that.
Right, exactly.
And because it was Tennessee.
Right. They didn't need to put up yards. Jesse asking, so we had this question, I believe it was yesterday. Have you seen the Lions' ATS record last 3 seasons? Might just start blindly betting them. They're 33-12 against the spread since 2022.
That was Campbell's first year, if I recall correctly. 2022, or was it 2021?
I'm not sure. 2022 is the first year they really came on. They missed the playoffs that year because week 17, Baker Mayfield.
Okay, yeah. So 2021 is the year when they started 0-10-1.
Yes.
and then played they ended up winning 3 games that year. Yeah, okay, yeah, it was 2021 because then they won 9 games, and I remember a lot of people were making the system play that, well, you've had a team go from 3 wins to 9, they usually regress the next year, the third year, and of course Detroit did anything but. They went from 9 to 12. So yeah, it was 2021 was Campbell's first year, and 2022 3, and now into 2024. Yeah, that number looks really good, and until I would almost, I guess you could sort of say you could blindly play them, and you might blindly play them until they didn't cover 2 weeks in a row. That's how strong they've been.
Yeah, they've been incredible. They've beaten.
Give them 1 point spread loss. You can write it off as okay, it happens. If they do it a second time, then maybe they've run out of gas, at least temporarily. Now they might go on another winning streak after that, but I would not blindly get off playing them once a streak ends. I never try to guess when a streak ends.
Yeah, I think that you want to pick your spots with everything. Like we seen this team last year. They played great for many games, but they had some slip ups. On Thanksgiving they lost to Green Bay.
Yeah.
They lost at Chicago, and they also didn't cover their first game against Chicago at home.
Yeah.
It just kind of.
But this is a better Detroit team, especially because they can run the football.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And they're not asking Goff to do all that much. They're saying, okay, throw 18, 20 passes a game, 9 yards a pass, that when you complete them, and the running game will take care of it because you got 2 fresh running backs. And a defense that is better than last year.
And something you have to keep in mind is that, if they keep covering the spread, the sports books are going to keep adding on attacks for them.
Well, it took them a while to catch up with New England the year 2007 when they were laying, 18, 20 points and winning by 30. Ultimately, caught up with them late in the season. That was the year, of course, where they were unbeaten. And, that was the game where the Giants nearly beat them in the final week of the season. I want to say 38-35, something like that. The Patriots won. And, of course, we know what happened in the Super Bowl. I don't even think they totaled that. They did not total 38 points combined, the two teams. But I think there was another team, I think. Kansas City went on a little bit of a roll. And then, of course, after that, I think the following year, they had the non-covering streak for a long period of time. So my approach to Detroit is if you can't bet on them, don't bet against them.
Yes, I think that's or like I said, pick and choose your spots. I was looking at their schedule. I think the first time I would not look to, or maybe even look to fade them. They have a home game against Green Bay, I think in week 14, and that they might be favored by a little by too many points. Like if they're favored by more than 7, I think Green Bay would be a good play, especially if Jordan Love is healthy in that game. Otherwise,
let's see where Green Bay plays. Detroit plays Green Bay. It's also after the Chicago game, and although it's a non-conference game after that, they play. Detroit plays Buffalo, and then they have a rematch with Chicago. Green Bay plays. They host San Francisco and Miami before they play to Detroit. And then they're at Seattle, New Orleans, Minnesota, and Chicago. So it might certainly be a less strenuous stretch for the Packers than it would be for the Lions. But we don't know, we don't know what the playoff implications are. Detroit could lose there, and Green Bay could catch them in the standings, and it might be a very important game for Detroit. But if that's the case, that means Green Bay will have been playing very well, and maybe the 7 points, if that indeed is the line, might be a bit too much given the way that the two teams would be playing at the time that they meet.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's pretty far away right now. It's beginning of next month, so we'll see. All right, let's get to the last game. We have Dolphins at the Rams here. There's only 1 day's worth of injuries, injury reports, so I didn't really look at it. I will say though that the line, there's sharp money moving on the Dolphins. This line moved from 2.5 to 1, and then I got word that there was a syndicate that initiated a bet on the Rams because of the line drop at -1. Not because of the line drop; they're just waiting on the line to move. So they like the Rams. So conflicting sharp sides here. I like the Rams. I think they're a better team than the Dolphins. Obviously, the records say that. Tua's been out for a while, so can't really look at the records. But I trust Sean McVay to expose Miami's weaknesses than the other way around. I don't think Mike McDaniel is that good of a coach. Also, you have to worry about circadian rhythms here. You know, the West Coast team hosting an East Coast team at 8 o'clock. You know, that generally not a huge factor for me, but I will like if I'm thinking like betting 2 units on a team and they have this advantage, then I would maybe bump that up to 3 units. So I like I like how the Rams match up against the Dolphins. So what are your thoughts on this game?
Well, you go back 2 weeks, and of course they blew that late lead and lost what could end up being a costly loss, 28-27 at home to Arizona. But I do like the way that they played last week up in Buffalo, especially after Buffalo had drilled them in week 2, which of course was the game in which Tua suffered the concussion. So I think they're getting a lot of positive sentiment or feelings amongst the team that, hey, we've now got a chance with Tua back, and that should help the entire offense be a little bit more, give them a little bit more balance than they've had with the backups filling in. I like both of these teams. I like both of them teams to perform well down the stretch, especially the Rams. We talked about it last week. You know, they were 3-6 last year and ended up winning 7 of 8 to make the playoffs as a wild card before losing in Detroit. But I do like Miami in this game. I think that Tua will be 1 week healthier. He'll have 1 more week working with his favorite receivers, which also should make the running game a little bit stronger. I am concerned, and maybe this is why I'm also surprised, or maybe why I like the Dolphins, the huge coaching mismatch in this game. And you had the Rams favored by only 1 in this game instead of being a pick'em, and maybe that's why the line switched over when they said, "Okay, we take a look at everything. Yeah, maybe it is a pick'em game." And then when I consider, the 2 coaches, that maybe Miami should be the small favorite. They've got only 2 wins. What are they? 2-6, I think. So they've got an opportunity with that 1 less loss than those other 2-7 teams at making a run. I think the schedule is manageable down the stretch. They don't play Buffalo anymore, as we alluded to a little bit earlier when we talked about the Buffalo game. I've got Miami winning this game. It's almost like my thoughts with Pittsburgh and Washington. Although I've liked those 2 teams from the start, I did not like the Rams and the Dolphins earlier in the season. Certainly after Tua got injured in week 2, but I'm now shifting around that I think both of those teams have the talent to make runs. Yeah, coaching is a concern for the Dolphins, but sometimes talent can outperform coaching.
Yeah. So we had a comment here. Lions minus 11.5 next week against Jacksonville with no Lawrence. It might be minus 14.5 next Sunday night. I actually logged into FanDuel to see if that line was still available, and it's not. So
what is it now? Or is it off the board?
It's off the board. Yeah, I'm not seeing it. So Jesse, I don't know where you're looking. Like, if you let us know, I would be interested in betting the Lions right now at that number if possible, because you're right, that could skyrocket here. All right, so yeah, I guess that's about it. Do you have any final thoughts, or do you want to plug thelogicalapproach.com?
No, I think that we pretty much covered it all. I think this is one of our longest shows of the year, but and I can't blame it on. I can blame it on me for yapping so much, but I can't say that we had a full 16-game schedule, because we only had 14 games to cover with the Thursday night and actually there's only 1 game left, because there are 4 teams on byes this week. So 1 game played tonight and 2 others. So nonetheless, no, I've got the stats up there for the stat matchups through this past Monday night, and we'll pay last Saturday for the colleges. And I'm going to start putting some of the complimentary plays up there now on a daily basis. I did it for a day or 2 over the weekend. I think we split them out. I think we hit the college and lost the pro one, if I remember. It may have been 2 college plays, but I'll be putting something up for tomorrow. Oh, we did. No, actually, we did put one up the other night for Central Michigan in the in the midweek MAC games, which I normally don't play the midweek. These Tuesday, Wednesday games, sometimes a Thursday game. I did play one last night. I like the MAC, but we'll be putting that up every day now as far as that goes with the complimentary play. It's a play that I've made myself, and it's one where I don't expect there to be adverse line movement, or certainly no more than a point, and hopefully not even a half point.
Jesse with $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Jesse. He says, sorry I took over the chat. No, don't worry about that. No, I mean you had some great posts in here.
Oh,
So
chat
really,
participation is encouraged.
exactly. Yeah, no, the more the better. So thank you so much. Again, can't say it enough. Like, just really appreciate the support here because these YouTube ads don't pay much at all. So thank you so much, Jesse. Yeah, so check out thelogicalapproach.com. The link is in the description, just in case you need it there. Andy, thanks so much for joining us once again. Love having you on the show. It's always a highlight of the week to have you on to discuss these games because I'm always curious to hear where you are on these games. So,
Yeah, no, I and again, as I've mentioned to you, I think whether it be on the air or afterwards or before, I like the fact that we agree on some games, but also that we disagree on some games because that's what makes it interesting. Because yeah, as I tell people when they're doing their own handicapping, always, no matter how much you like a side, always consider the other side, and you can make cases for the other side in basically every game. And then it's just a matter of weighing the two sides, the two reasons, and decide which reasons seem to be more likely to be applicable or more likely to carry more weight than the reasons you assign to the other side. Because if you're only looking at one side of the game, you are making maybe subconsciously, you're making a biased decision.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you should always consider all the factors, and it would be boring if we agreed on all the games. So,
I don't want to be known as Mr. Me Too.
exactly right. All right, so yeah, thank you so much, Andy. Thank you everyone for watching and commenting. I really appreciate it. Please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video. This is the link in the description for the merch store. And thank you so much, Jesse, for the $5 super chat. We're going to be back on Saturday. Tom is going to make his return from his 1 week hiatus. He's going to be back. I'm looking forward to seeing what he has to say about these games. But if you guys don't listen to that, good luck with your picks this week. But otherwise, have a great start to your weekend. And
I don't like the way you emphasize that. It was almost sort of like, and if you don't listen to our podcast, good luck with your picks this week. As in, better listen to the podcast because you're gonna get some information.
That's yeah. I didn't.
I know. You weren't even thinking about that. I picked up on it and wanted to make a bad joke about it, but no, it's great information. And again, it's up to the minute information on Saturday night. Also, tonight we're speculating and not necessarily guessing, but hypothesizing about what could be situations. There'll be a lot of more definitive information given out when you do that podcast. And I imagine that most of the leagues, not necessarily all of them, depending upon what kind of league you play in, is it a widespread public one or one that you do with friends? But of course, most leagues will allow you to make roster moves up until kickoff of the early Sunday game. But although they'll keep that in mind, unless there's an exception in your league for that 6 a.m. game in Germany.
Yeah, make sure you set your alarms early. If you have players in these games, just good luck with waking up, especially on the West Coast. Andy, I feel your pain. Although I always joke that I operate on West Coast time as well because I go to sleep.
And why didn't the league have this game like last week when you could gain an extra hour of sleep by moving the clocks back Saturday night? Another NFL decision that I didn't think of.
I thought about that too. I don't know. Nothing that Goodell does makes sense. I don't know.
For our fans, we're going to give them an extra hour of sleep this week, and then instead of next week when they could really use it.
Yeah, exactly. I always hated that, because you lose or you gain it, you gain an hour, but it's like I always thought that's like, okay, I have to wait an extra hour for football, so it's kind of like a little torture. But then in the spring, you lose an hour when, like in the spring, I can have the night off or something on the weekend, like play some video games or hang out with friends. You lose an hour there. I wish it was reversed. So anyway, So
you know what the answer to that is? You got to move to Australia.
Exactly. Well, there's some states that don't change, right? Arizona doesn't change, so.
I know. I think Hawaii doesn't also. Indiana, I don't know if they still do, but for a long time, part of the state did and part of the state didn't. I think it's not uniform in that state.
I'm not sure about it. I know Arizona doesn't change, but So anyway, if you don't,
which may be why the Colts played a bad first half and a decent second half last week, or something like that.
Could be.
Even though the game was in Minnesota, they were these. Well, you know what? That take that back. It could have been a factor because they spent that extra hour in Minnesota.
Yeah,
it already arrived for the game.
The
Sunday night game.
Not great. But anyway, maybe they spent too much time at the mall and got lost or something. Which that mall is incredible. You just keep walking and walking. It's insane. But yeah, guys, if you don't watch Saturday's show, you will lose. I'm just kidding. So we'll be back on Saturday. Andy, thanks again, and have a great night, everyone. I'll talk to you later.
It's always a